Thanks for tuning in to the Conchs, a Bring Joy podcast. I'm your host, Joy Newlish. I'm a first-generation Conch raised by a fourth. What does that add up to? A whole lot of Conch pride. And that's what this show is all about, celebrating the incredible people of Key West and their stories from every corner of our Conch community. So sit back and relax, cuz. Let's do this thing.
Experience the beautiful backcountry of the Florida Keys through an adventure like no other. Our expertly trained crew will take you on the only true sailing excursion in Key West. Kayak through beautiful channels and snorkel in the wildlife refuge. Then settle down with some refreshments and treats before the sun sets. Danger Charters. Adventure awaits. Locals get 30% off.
Hey, Victor, thank you for supporting Key West Conch Baseball. Go Conchs.
How we doing, Conch fans? I got a good one for you today. We're talking with Victor Gallardo, a true Conch who loves Key West and baseball. That's my kind of guy. Welcome to the show, Vic.
Hey, Joy, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
I know we've been talking about it for a little while, and now we're finally doing it.
Yeah, I think I might have had some hair on my head since when we started all of this.
Hey, but you know what? Some people may recognize you because this is your first time as a guest, but you made a special appearance back in November on the episode I did for Billy Wardlow.
Yeah, as you know, I'm very close to Billy, and thank you for having me do that little spotlight on him. I'm so proud of that young man, whether it be baseball or regular life. What he's done is phenomenal. And for me to have played a small part in his life is awesome.
It is good stuff. I really love that interview. But I wanted to start out talking about Key West. You're a true Conch. You lived here during, the glory days as far as I'm concerned. So tell me about your Key West. What was it like growing up when you were a young kid?
It was a carefree lifestyle, Joy. I have these fond memories of playing stickball with Ralphie, Louis Richie Pazzo, Stevie Barrios in Richie and Louis' grandmother's backyard. Wayne Garcia did a beautiful wood carving for me that I treasure, and it is one of those games, and Eddie Roberts is poking his head up over the fence because that was the core group that we used to hang around with. We'd fish together. We had this little dinghy boat with a motor from Sears, and we'd go out off of Smathers Beach. And the rule was if one of the parents did a drive around the boulevard, they had to be able to see the boat. And we'd catch a bunch of fish, come back home, and go to Albert and Altie's house here on Thompson Lane. And Albert had this big skillet that covered all 4 units of the stove. We'd fry grunts, and she'd make grits and pork and beans, and we'd have us a good old time. It was that type of life. We never had to worry about anything, unlike these kids today that have to worry about so much.
It is a different world, and that's why I say it was the golden years for you guys. You talk about even your parents being able to ride around the island and see you out on the water. You're lucky if you ride around Key West and even see the water now.
Well,
so many resorts.
Well, the thing about it was back in the day too, Joy, we drive down Duval Street and you had your hand out the window all the time because you knew you were going to see someone that you recognized walking down the sidewalk. That doesn't happen today. Although I will say that my buddy Mikey Stack, Sandy and I were walking down White Street one morning, and this car made a U-turn, and Sandy says, "Who is that?" And that young man jumped out of the car and said, "Vic, it's me, Mikey." And that just made my day.
You gotta love Mike Stack.
Oh, what an incredible young man that is. And I'm so happy for his success, and I'm so glad and honored to call him a friend.
Same here. And that's one of the ways that you're home, right? when you're out in the streets and you hear your name.
Absolutely. Sitting on my mom and dad's porch, people would come by, blow the horn. Um, People would ride their bikes and wave. The conch train would come by. We'd tell them that they were lying, that there's no such thing as 9 chimneys on the rooftop, you know. But that was the good old days. That was the good old days.
Hey, I'm glad you mentioned your mom and daddy. I was at Mallory Square actually the other day going to see a play and walking through Mallory Square and El Mason de Pepe. And your parents are memorialized, in my opinion, in the best way, dancing, having a good time. Tell me about growing up with your mom and dad.
Oh, incredible, incredible individuals. Joy, I think in my speech on Dinner of the Diamond, I mentioned that we didn't have a lot, but I didn't lack anything. They were there for me uh, emotionally when the game put a lot of stress on me, when life, a breakup with a girlfriend, our house was always filled with people. My mom was constantly making Cuban coffee that she sweetened with condensed milk, and people would just ring the doorbell and say, "Chicky, you got any coffee made?" And my dad. Great man who, blue collar worker who worked in the fire department with your dad and George as well. But he would wait for me on his days off when I got home from school, take me to Point Siena School, where we would practice, and hone my skills on that pine cone filled field out there. That was their playground in those days.
Speaking of those fields, how about the new facilities that we have now when you come back home and you go and visit 17 and little Ralphie? What do you think of these new facilities?
Oh, it's just unbelievable. I was talking to Jackie Niles the other day about the last time I had gone to Florida State and seen what they have done since the days when I was there. But going home now, it's like it's mesmerizing. We always had beautiful facilities. Rex Weech was beyond great when it came to making sure that the Rex was always pristine for when we practiced or when we played. In the Clayton Sterling facility down there, at that time it was Peter Dopp Field. It was one of the most beautiful little league fields in the state. It had a concrete wall with all the sponsors painted on it, but the infield grass was pristine. The clay was perfect. So I really am overwhelmed by what the program is going now, but it's so wonderful. I didn't even have a batting cage at Key West High when I played for 4 years, and now they're going to have a state of the art facility, indoor facility on top of that, which is absolutely phenomenal.
I can't wait to see it all finished. It seems like every game we go out there, it's getting closer and closer to being done. Not to mention the fact you dropped some of the names. We're going to have a museum to be able to honor the great history of Conch baseball. Let's back up just a little bit.
Okay.
You mentioned Peter Dopp Field, you dropped Clayton Sterling's name. Tell me where baseball began for you. Where'd your love for baseball begin? And you've been playing since you were a little guy. So tell me about some of those days.
Well, I'm named after my uncle, who signed a contract with the San Francisco Giants the same day as the great Hall of Famer Orlando Cepeda. They were next door neighbors in Puerto Rico, and they went through A ball, double A ball, triple A ball, and my uncle actually had a major league contract and was given a demand by his then fiance, me or the game, and he chose her. So my daddy named me after him. So at age 5, I remember him rolling balls to me and playing catch with me, taking me out to the Tomato League that was played out at the old Wickers Field. So by the age of 8, we played what they called at that time midget league. We didn't have T-ball. We went right into kids pitch, and there's a picture somewhere of me on the pitcher's mound, and Searstown is being developed. That's how long ago that was. And then from there, I went to the middle league, the middle field, and at that time, the middle field was ages 10, 11, and 12. And so I played against some pretty big kids like Clinton Eppinger, who just threw the living tar out of the ball. Billy Joe Russell, who was a little older than me, a phenomenal baseball player back then. But I played for Clayton Sterling, and his knowledge of baseball, and his work ethic, we practiced almost daily out there at Point Siena Field, Point Siena School, on those pine cones. I'd get 100 ground balls a day, and really hone my skills, and the knowledge he provided got me going towards Pony League, where I only played 1 year. I played at age 13, and that was at that time 13 and 14. I don't know what it is today.
You talk about the pine cones. I'm thinking about a bad hop.
Oh, we had plenty of them. You made sure you wore your protective gear, if you know what I mean, because there were these little round pine cones that looked
I know
like
what you're
sea
talking
urchins.
about, those little ones, like
Yeah.
BBs.
Yeah, and he didn't care. Clayton didn't care. Him and Avelio Forns would hit you ground balls every day, all day. And of course, that's where I got introduced to his son Randy, who would come out and help us. As in those days, I pitched as well. So I learned how to throw my curveball from Randy.
I was gonna ask you. I've got his name right here. I was gonna ask you. Do you remember seeing him play?
Yes, I do.
Give me a Randy Sterling story.
Oh, they were playing Killian one day at the Rex, and he hit this kid with his breaking ball, and we thought the kid was dead. We really did, because Randy would throw his breaking ball almost as hard as he would throw his fastball. But Randy, in my opinion, I know you and I have talked about Boog. We talked about Brooks. I never saw anyone as good as Randy. Randy was a thing of beauty. I try to emulate him anytime I pitched, but he was just spectacular. What they don't remember is Randy could hit too. I saw Randy take a lot of balls deep into that left center field gap back in the days when my dad used to take me out to watch him play.
I love that. And it's one of the reasons why I ask you, because I don't think we tell enough stories about Randy. I'm partial to Boog, right? And
Yeah.
Brooksy, that's my guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we just need to tell more stories about Randy.
Well, and the great stories. Well, here's one from my mentor, Manny Crespo, who also was Ralphie Jr.'s private instructor. Manny told me one time when he was at Miami High, and Manny was the number 3 pick overall by Boston in 1968. And Manny said, Vic, I remember facing Randy, and I had heard so much about him, and it was good morning, good afternoon, and good night. He said it was like zip, zip, zip. He said, I had never seen anything like that in my playing days at Miami High. And that's a man who was probably the greatest shortstop in the history of Miami before A-Rod.
Yeah, you're dropping names, and I just can't wait. I can't wait to look at the transcript. It's gonna be popping like that.
Yeah. And and then there's the story where Randy pitched back-to-back games in the state title when we won a title in our class division, and I don't know if it was a challenge or it was set up by the state where we played the next night against a higher rank or lower rank class division, and he pitched that game as well, and back-to-back nights.
I heard about like over 100 pitches too. right?
Yeah, and I mean, just an incredible feat. You got guys today that go 6 innings. This guy's going 100 pitches in 2 nights, each night.
Certainly was a different time. I'm going to take you out of baseball for a minute. You got to see Randy Sterling. You also got to see now the late, great Bill Butler. We lost recently here in Key West, and you saw him play basketball. And I know we're talking about baseball, but you're talking about the good old days, and not too many people could tell me stories about him. So you
I
got
do.
any Bill Butler stories?
Oh, you know what, Joy? Back in those days, if you didn't get a ticket to the JV game, you didn't get a seat at the varsity game. That's how packed the gym was in those days. And, you have to understand that team that Bill played on also had the great Ronald Harris, Mike Berger Raymond, also known as Toothpick because Mike played with a toothpick in his mouth, Warren Marshall, Anthony Luther Mounts, Gully Portier. That team was electric. But of course, Bill was the centerpiece because at 6'1", his jumping ability and his shooting ability was through the roof. When they won that state title, I pretty sure it was against Curly. Curly had a basketball player named Cyril Baptiste who was 7 foot, and Bill would out jump him on the opening toss. And yeah, he was not only a phenomenal basketball player, but he was a phenomenal human being. We mentioned my mom and dad earlier. That anytime he saw my mom and dad, he would hug them, tell them how much he loved them, how much he appreciated the support that my mom and dad gave him. Just an incredible loss for our community at his passing. Earlier last month.
I appreciate you sharing those stories. I remember as a kid, and I've mentioned this story a couple times on different episodes, but his reputation preceded him. My older sisters and brothers would say, "Oh, you're going to have Mr. Butler for a teacher. He's a
Yep.
great teacher." And then George would say, "Well, he was even a better basketball player." And
Yeah.
talking about him jumping and snatching the quarter and all the
Oh,
things
yeah.
off the rim. And
I
so,
actually saw that at the school one day where he took it off the top of the backboard.
you saw it.
Yeah. It's not a myth. It's fact.
Well, he will be missed, and it's one of the main reasons why I have this show is to be able to capture all those stories before we forget, right?
Oh, those days of Conch basketball were phenomenal because, I don't know if they still have it. I haven't been in the gym in so long. In each corner there was like a big tower, and they'd have a band up there playing music like The Horse and 25 or 6 to 4 by Chicago, and that place would get rocking. And I remember my freshman year, I was so small that if the seniors wanted a drink, they would pass me down all the way down. I'd go get the drink, go back up. Yeah. And Mr. Archer would sit up. There was a glass booth on one side of the court, and Mr. Archer would sit up there and keep an eye on us, make sure we didn't get out of hand.
Oh, that's good stuff. You talk about Mr. Archer too.
Yeah.
So good. So you talk about being a freshman in high school. Talk to me about making the Key West Conch baseball team. Tell that story.
Oh, Joy, I like, as I said, I played 1 year of Pony League, and I finished second in the batting title to my dear friend Richie Pazzo. I think Richie hit 500 and I hit 490. And I made the All-Star team, and we make it all the way to state, but I don't get to play. I mean, I got in one game in right field, and I was just very taken back by that. And my dream had always been to play a state championship in front of the Key West fans. And I knew that at 14, the state championship was going to be held in Key West. But my dad convinced me to go out for the JV team. So here I went. I go to the meeting. The first meeting was in October, and Otto says that the first practice is the Monday after Christmas. We got to have long pants, or baseball pants. And I didn't have baseball pants. So I went out with my shorts and a T-shirt. And every week, he had a cut list and he posted on his door. And sure enough, my name wasn't on it. My name wasn't on it. My name wasn't on it. But the last cut list, if your name was on it, you had made the JV team. Or the varsity. So I go there and my name's not on the JV list, which is what I'm looking for. And as I'm walking away, the door opens and there he stands. And I said, "Hey, coach, how are you?" And I was brokenhearted, probably had puckered lips and swollen eyes. And he says, "Congratulations." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You made varsity and we have a meeting today at 3:00. And that's the rest is history. So this skinny 14-year-old kid weighed 117 pounds, had gone out with blue jeans and a pair of old cleats from Sears and a glove from Sears and made varsity. And started every game from there on.
You mentioned Otto. So Coach Tufenkijan was your coach?
Yes.
Who else was part of that coaching staff, and who were some of your teammates?
Coach Fraga was the assistant coach. My teammates that year, my freshman year, were people like Bill Spotswood, famed Key West attorney, David Cohen, let's see, Jeff Holmes, a lot of older guys. Brooks was pitching on the JV at that time. But then in my sophomore year, Richie Pazzo came in as a freshman and made varsity. Brooks came up to varsity. Then in my junior year, Louis Pazzo came in as well. Terry Nelson, a guy named Donald Brown, great Stephen Greenwood, great ball players that I was surrounded with.
And you played second base?
I played second base. I was a shortstop through Little League and Pony League, but when I went to high school, I had a good arm, but not that good of an arm to get it across the diamond at that age. So I played second base and I stayed there.
And who were some of the teams that you guys played back in the day? And did you have as many home games as we have now, or did you have a lot of bus trips?
We took a bus trip about once a week. But we did have a lot of home games. But back then we were in the Greater Miami Athletic Conference, and we played schools like Miami High, Killian, Carl Park. Our arch nemesis was Miami Beach because we were always battling for that number one seed because that was how you got into the playoffs. And my freshman year, we didn't make the playoffs. My sophomore year, we went all the way to the state finals, losing in the state championship. Junior year, we lost early. And my senior year, we lost the heartbreaker in the semifinals to Leesburg of the state championship.
I said that recently. Some really great Conch teams never won a championship.
No, it's often been said that the 70s is a forgotten decade because we didn't win one in the 70s. And one of my biggest regrets that I still live with today is in that semifinal game against Leesburg. We were winning 2-1 with one out and a man on first. And I was told, get the out at second base. We had a routine ground ball that I would have turned a million times for a double play. I got the out. That guy steals second. An errant throw in the center field gets him to third. Base hit into left. And the game's tied. And then we lose in extra innings. And I remember, I know you like the stories. I remember calling my dear friend Janet Daughtry at that night and saying, I'm sorry, because it wasn't about me. It was about the Conchs, the fans. I'm so sorry I didn't turn that double play. But that's fate and that's destiny, and don't know what would have happened if I would have turned it. I know we would have gone to the state championship final. Maybe we would have had 12. But it's something that I live with. And when I went on into coaching, I always told my players, you play the game no matter what happens. If you throw it away, you throw it away. I don't care. You play the game.
I do want to talk about you coaching, but I want to go back to playing for a second because you mentioned a lot of teammates. You told me a story about Randy. Tell me a story about Brooksy.
Oh,
One that you can tell.
Brooks was probably my favorite pitcher to ever play behind. He wasn't overpowering, but he was crafty. He could command either side of the plate, and he had confidence in us behind him to pitch to contact. There wasn't no doubt about it. The greatest compliment that I've ever gotten as a baseball player came from him when he told my son, Ryan, I played with the great Cal Ripken, but when they hit a ground ball to your dad with 2 outs, I'll just walk off the field. And it doesn't get any better than that, coming from the great lefty himself, because he was great.
That
I can tell you a lot of stories I can't mention on this podcast, but that's a baseball story for you.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about the bus rides, and then I thought better of it.
Oh, well, I was able to play with Brooks in 1973 in the state championship for prep league that we won in Tallahassee. And then when I went to Florida State, I didn't even know how to get to my dorm room. These kids have these time slots, and they ride up with U-Hauls. I went to a payphone at a hotel and called Brooks. Hey, Brooks, can you come get me? Because I don't even know how to get to Osceola Hall. And he did. And I wish that I could have played another 2 years with him at Florida State, but again, it wasn't meant to be. And I was the last player cut that fall, and it turned out okay.
I would say so. And you did. So you mentioned Florida State because you did after QSI. You went to Miami-Dade and played there.
Correct. Played at Miami-Dade for 2 years. Went to the Junior College World Series in 1976. Lost in the quarterfinals. We just ran into a buzzsaw and they hit our pitching pretty good. And that's thin air up there in Colorado, and the ball carried, and we lost. But it was wonderful. We were number 1 in the country for the whole year. And I played with, I'm sure you've heard Ralph mention the name Chino Cartejia. He was the bench coach for the Royals. He was my first baseman. Richie was our shortstop. I played second. We had a guy named Isaac Sione who went on to play in the Braves organization. This guy was our catcher, and he had a comb in his back pocket, would comb his hair in between pitches. Yeah. I played with Elston Howard Jr., the great Yankees, catcher. I played with his son, Ellie Jr. He was our right fielder. A kid named Steve Lerner, who pitched at University of Miami. So it was a wonderful time at Miami-Dade. And at Florida State, truth is, I couldn't hit my way out of a paper bag that fall. Everything I hit was caught. And I had 2 All-American second basemen in front of me. But because of Brooks, Woody Woodward gave me an opportunity as a preferred walk-on, and it didn't work out. I was running off the field, thought I had made it. He called me back. But again, it's dark then, but now as you look back, you say, hey, it was meant to be.
All part of your story.
All part of the story.
You mentioned Ralph, 17.
Yeah.
This will kind of work us back to coaching. He was your teammate.
Yes, he was. 2 state championship teams, 69 and 73.
Good catcher?
Phenomenal catcher, phenomenal first baseman too, who could hit for power and had a rocket for an arm. Yeah.
And I heard now Rick Lopez earlier said that he just, I think, win number 438 or something like that.
Yeah.
Crazy,
Yeah.
successful coach. When you finished college, you came back home. You hung up your cleats as a player, but you coached. Tell
I
me
did.
about your coaching journey.
Well, I started in Key West. I was up in one of the offices at the bank that was right there next to George Mara's Pizza Hut. And I was watching a young man named Mario Mara Jr. turn double plays, and his sister was working there. And I said, he's going to get hurt. You need to let me work with him. So I started working with him. And the next thing I know, I was with Billy Wardlow, and then Russ asked if I would come out and work with the now infamous Black Widows.
Yes,
And
yes. Tell that story.
the Black Widows, they all had black gloves. I had Darren Mills at third base, Billy at short, Mario Mara at second, and a kid named Jeff. I don't remember his last name, who went on to play at the Naval Academy. Well, they all had black gloves, and they called themselves the Black Widows. So I wanted to make sure that everybody came out to see the Black Widows. So I took out a full-page ad in the back of the Citizen that said, "The Black Widows are coming." And I'm sitting in the hair salon when I worked for David Goody, and the police officer is getting his haircut with David, and he says to David, "David, did you see this thing about the Black Widows are coming? We've been talking down at the police station. We think this is gang coming in here." And David says, "That ain't no gang. That's that fool over there. He's named his infielders the Black Widows." And he took that ad out for them. True story. Can't make that stuff up.
That's a legendary story
Oh,
now.
it is. It is. And I love those guys. I've lost contact with all of them, with the exception of Billy, but it was fun, and that's how I got started. Then I moved up into Boca Raton, and I worked with this one young man who went to Syracuse University, and he was a basketball player. He wasn't a baseball player, but he wanted to try out, and had a great tryout, and he didn't make the team. And his mother called me and she says, he's real down. And I said, "Give me his number." In those days we didn't have cell number. And I said, his name is Eric. I said, "Eric, what's the problem?" And he said, "Coach, I wanted to make this team so bad because I wanted an identity." I said, "Identity? You are going to put on a lab coat one day that says Dr. Eric Lazar. How much more identity do you need?" And he said to me, "Coach, I never looked at it that way." And today he's a prominent orthopedic surgeon in the Boca Raton area. You don't need any more identity than that. And that's what kind of took me into up here. It was a crazy story because I was in the hair salon working, and I'm cutting this man named Larry Bradner's hair. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, Larry, do you have any kids?" He says, "Yeah, I have a son named John." And I said, "Does he play sports?" And he says, "Yeah, he's a pitcher over here at this new high school called Centennial." And I said, "Well, how they doing?" He says, "Yeah, not too good. He throws, but giving up a lot of unearned runs." I said, "A lot of errors?" He says, "Yep." I said, "Well, you need me." And he said, "Who are you?" And I told him who I was. He said, "Well, at that time I was going through chemo and radiation treatments for Hodgkin's lymphoma." And I said, "Look, I'm dealing with some stuff right now, but I'll come out under a volunteer pretense." I ended up staying for 11 years. Loved my time there. Met a lot of wonderful young men. And some of them. You should know one of them for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe one of your most well-known players did not go on to play in Major League Baseball, but he went on to the NFL. Can we share that story?
Absolutely, because it is to show you that, you know what, we can't control the narrative, Joy. We are only in control of so much of our lives and of our destiny. The young man's name is Mike McDonald, and Mike McDonald is the head coach for the world champion Seattle Seahawks.
I
And
just got the chills.
yeah, I never forget back in 2001, I was in the coach's office, and you got to understand, I brought a lot of Key West with me when I came up to Centennial, and um, we were kind of finagling how I could be the head coach of the JV without being a teacher. And I was in the office talking to a gentleman named Shelby Smith, who was going to be on paper the head coach, even though I was going to run the program. And he said to me, he said, Vic, I want you to meet Mike McDonald. I call him Mikey Mac. He will drink gasoline and run through that center field wall for you. And so I had the honor of coaching him for 2 years on the JV. Then he went up to varsity, and I went with him. And one day I'm driving home, and I get a call in my car, and it says, Coach Vic, this is so-and-so assistant head baseball coach at Harvard University. So Mikey was a very intelligent young man as well.
Right.
And he asked me, he says, what can you tell me about him? And so I took Mikey to the moon and back. I mean, because he was that type of kid. And he said, well, on your word, he's in. So I'm driving home in 2005 with my parents because I think it was Wilma that put all the water into the
Yeah.
city.
Yeah, that
And
was
I
a
get a
terrible.
phone call. I get a phone call from my pitching coach, Chuck Lusted, and he says, Vic, I got some bad news. And I said, what's that? And he says, Mikey Mack blew out his knee playing football today. I said, but he had had a series of stingers and he was told not to play anymore. And he said, Vic, if you look long and hard enough, someone will clear you. Someone did. And Mikey went out, and on the last play of practice, he destroyed his knee. So obviously, I wasn't very happy. I made a phone call where I was not too pleasant in my verbiage. And Harvard was gone, so he went on to University of Georgia and got a community coach job at one of the local high schools. Was named community coach of the year. Knocked on my door one day at the salon and said, "Can you go to lunch?" And we're sitting there, and he unfolds this newspaper article where he's been named this community coach of the year, and he had dedicated the award to me. Obviously, I'm breaking down, crying. Um, and then he went on to become a graduate assistant under Mark Richt. And then he gets his internship program with one of the Harbaugh brothers at the Baltimore Ravens. And I'm sitting there one day on my couch in my house in Roswell, and it hits me. I said, you damn fool. Mikey Mack was never supposed to go to Harvard. This is where he was supposed to go. So I picked up my phone and I called Mikey Mack and I apologized. I said, I am so sorry, thinking that I could control the narrative of what was to be your destiny. And I was so wrong. And he said, Coach, I knew you were only looking out for me. And today, here he is. I got a very interesting text from him the other day where I asked him, I said, hey, um, are you making sure you are doing the things off the field now that you've accomplished so much on the field with your family, and this and that? And he said, yeah, coach, I'm actually on the plane flying back. I just got through playing golf at Augusta National with Peyton Manning. So I think he's doing okay.
He's doing all right.
He's doing all right. But he is a wonderful young man, and I only wish him the best. His dream job is to actually be the GM of the Boston Red Sox, and who knows? He's already accomplished so much in the NFL that might be the next step. But I'd be proud of him, just like I am of any of my kids that are working regular jobs, if he would have just gone into business, because he was that phenomenal of a young man.
Winners win, right?
Yeah, winners.
People that work hard and determined and
Absolutely.
disciplined and like you said, run through a wall. That mentality allows you to be successful in whatever
Yeah,
path you choose.
yeah. And I I never forget, I got a phone call from him when he was with the Ravens. One of his defensive backs had been killed in a motorcycle accident in Miami. And he said, Coach, I don't know how to talk to my players about it. I need your help. That meant more to me than anything he had ever accomplished, that he would think that highly of me to ask me something so personal.
That's really special. That reminds me of something that I shared on when I did an episode with Jade and Jules Castillo.
Yeah,
And I said that the title coach is something that stays with you forever. Once you earn the title coach, it's like mom and dad, right?
exactly.
You don't ever stop being a mom
No,
and dad. You don't ever stop being a coach.
no. And there's so many tentacles that reach out um, from that title. It's not just about what you do on the field. There's so much more, and I think that um, more importantly is because Brooks Cherry once said to Ryan and I, the game comes to end for everybody, but the game of life goes on. So you have to coach these individuals to go on and become great citizens, um, not just baseball players or not just softball players, because we all know how difficult that path is. The epitome of a baseball player in my eyes was Ralphie Jr. and 10 years in the minor leagues trying to get there. But he's taken what he's learned from his dad, from mentors like Manny Crespo, and now he's passing it on to these young men. And I'm sure he thinks the same way, that if these young men go on to be great citizens, it's okay if they don't go on to be phenomenal baseball players at the next level.
Conch baseball is lucky to have him for sure.
Woo! Yeah.
Tell me, let's kind of switch gears and talk a little bit about Conch baseball.
Woo!
And you know, I've shared a few times. I say Conch baseball is the joy in my life. It
You're the joy in
and
their life too.
hey,
You need to know that.
well, thank you for that. But I don't, I feel good about it. I'm happy with that, right? What kind of life am I living? This is good stuff right here. But one of the reasons I say that is because of the community and the connections that it brings us. And the icing on the cake for me is that you and I were reconnected at the Dinner on the Diamond several years back. You were asked to be one of the keynote speakers. Take me back to getting that phone call, you know, inviting you to come and be one of the keynote speakers, and then go back to that moment when you grabbed the mic, and what was the message that you wanted to deliver to those young conch players?
Ooh, Joy, it was so wonderful and so uplifting to get that call. Because I've always considered myself to be a good ball player, a good part of the history of Key West baseball. But here I was going to be in the same limelight with all these greats, with Boo, with Randy, with Brooks. Um, and I was going to have the opportunity to pour what had been in my heart out to the community. So I rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. Sandy would tell me she'd hear me 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, downstairs, because I didn't want to read off of a paper. I didn't know if we were going to have a podium. So I wanted to memorize it. I knew that little Ralphie had asked me to keep it at 15 minutes or less. So I wanted to stay in that time frame, but I had so much to be thankful for and so much that I wanted to cover. There were so many people, people like Papa Tony Davila, who would make sure that I ate when I was on the road, because the school in those days gave you $1.25. And you went to Dayland Mall for lunch and for dinner. You weren't going to eat much with that. My parents would give me whatever they had. I remember my mom taking her last $3 out of her purse one time and giving it to me. A lot of times you skipped lunch and ate Burger King for dinner. But Papa Tony would always tell me, hey, Carew, You make sure you eat. I got you. Vincent Catala was another one. He was a police lieutenant at that time. And as you know, the streets of Key West could be the streets of Key West. And they would call me every once in a while, and he would never let me answer. Albert Pazzo, one time I was struggling, and he, took me out in his side yard there on Thompson Lane. Said, no, the way you're holding the bat is causing you not to get the barrel through the ball. Changed it, and I went on to have great success. So I wanted to make sure that I thanked everybody, and I wanted to make sure that everyone in that crowd knew how appreciative I was of them, of you guys that sit in those bleachers night after night and cheer us on. I remember one time I was in Carl Park High School. We were playing an afternoon game, and I look over on the bleachers, and there's James Bogoff, Scott Betancourt, a guy named Jamie, and someone else. They had skipped school and driven up to Miami to see me play. You know how much that means to you? And you want to give thanks for that, because it can't be about you. It has to be about them. And so that was a huge honor for me that night. Huge honor.
It was special. It was a great speech, and I'm happy that I went to that event.
Oh, listen, when I saw you, oh man, I was like, wow, look who's here. And that means the world to me, that people would turn out to hear me talk. That's touching. Because again, it's not me, it's them that I want to talk about. And then I want to thank.
Yeah, it was so good. I love that. We've had that a few times. We didn't have it more recently, but since then we've been in communication. We haven't lost touch, because we had lost touch for many years. No, there was another guy there. I don't know if it was that night or the year after. Richie Garcia. He spoke, and I finally got his number, and I dropped the idea of him being on the show. Is there any chance that if I could get him on the show, that you would co-host it with me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You want to hear something crazy? My mom used to babysit Richie Garcia.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And, I was the bat boy for the Sun Caps, the Key West Sun Caps. And Richie was an umpire in the Florida State League at that time. And so I would run into Richie at a lot of games, because I traveled with the team. But Richie was the one who taught me. In those days, we used to rub the balls with a thing called Mississippi mud, and it came in a can, and it took the film off the baseball, and it made it like this beautiful grayish color. Richie was the one that taught me how to do it in the old clubhouse there at Wicker Stadium down which at those days was right there on Kennedy Drive.
That's good stuff. Well, remember that story. So, like I said, I finally got his number, and I'm gonna reach out to him, and I'll drop your name.
Yeah, he's great umpire. Great umpire. I know he gets a lot of flack for that call with the Yankees, but hey, you know how much you and I love the Yankees, so it's all right by me.
Since the Dinner on the Diamond and that keynote speak, you still very much a part of the program. You're in Atlanta now, but you still keep up with Conch baseball. You're always listening on the radio. You've even traveled to make sure you can see them when they're close by. What is Conch baseball? What does that mean? You dance around it, but how would you define Conch baseball?
It's so unique. Joy, I've always said that if you haven't lived it, you won't understand it. I can give you an example. In 2006, Mike McDonald, which we mentioned earlier, dedicated the indoor hitting facility at Centennial High School to me at the awards banquet at the end of the year. I have not stepped foot on the field at Centennial High School since my son Ryan played against them in 2010. So that's 16 years ago. Yet I listen to every Conch baseball game there is. I have the great fortune to be dear friends with Wayne and Maria Davila. I actually escorted Maria for homecoming our senior year. And of course, Augie, their grandson, is the starting shortstop. And then I'm also second cousin or third cousin to Cruz Holmes. His mom, Leslie, was Landy's daughter, and we were second cousins. But it doesn't matter if I know them or not. They are the Conchs. They continue the storied tradition of that program with the great leadership of Ralphie and Ralphie Jr. And I was a part of that before. And I want that to continue until, we're no longer here. Because it is something so unique that it's hard to explain that a tiny little black dot on a huge map can produce the quality players that island produces and do what we have done. 11 state championships. And like I said, I lost 2 that I'd love to have back. We probably could have 13.
That's good stuff. To quote our dear friend Brooks Carey, Conch baseball is the straw that stirs the drink.
It is, no doubt about it. You were talking about my coaching. One of the hardest things I had to do was 2005, when that great Key West High team came up here on their spring break trip, because they're on their spring break trip right now, and they played against Centennial High School that I was coaching at, and there was no winning for me, Joy. I had been down to Key West in December. I had thrown batting practice. I had hit fungos. I knew those guys, Desi, DJ, Blakey, Rayco, Little Ralphie, all those guys. And it was so difficult that my players were asking me, hey, Coach Vic, do you want us to win or do you want us to lose? There was no winning for me. And we came out victorious in an incredible game, 10-9. But I came home and just literally cried my eyes out because I love this so much. And then I had those boys. Mike McDonald was my third baseman that night. The most difficult thing I've ever had to do in the game was coach against my alma mater.
Hey, I can, I know that you love big. A couple nights ago, I text you and I'm like, are you going to watch the World Baseball Classic was happening? I'm like, we got U.S. against DR. Are you going to watch? And of course, our friend Billy that we already mentioned, Billy Wardlow, the equipment manager for the DR. And you say, no,
No,
I can't do that to myself. Billy's on the DR and you got Team USA, but I can't.
that was tough. So as you know, I watched TGL and listened to the Conchs.
That's love. That's pure love right there.
Yeah, you've got these long-lasting relationships that you've created on both sides of the fence, and it's like, God, if I pull this way, what are these people going to think about me? If I pull this way, what are they going? And to stay in the middle, almost impossible. And I know that someone posted a picture of Miss Joanne Mingo the other day. She was at that game, and boy, did she give me crap all night long. She would tell me I better get back in the box, and I'd give it back to her. And I'm walking around the catcher's the batter's box here, going to first base, and she said something that cracked me up so bad. She said, I know a lot of stories about you that I could tell these people. And I was laughing so hard, I just went down there and just really, really, really laughed so hard. But, that was another great loss for our beloved community.
I'm glad you mentioned her. When we talk about Conch fans, you can't,
She
she
was a good one.
deserves her own plaque in that museum.
She was a good one. Yeah,
You
we've had
mentioned
some good
Papa
ones.
Tony already, and then Ramona Johnson's another one that we posted a picture up the other day. We've had some legendary fans in the
Oh, Eddie
stands over
Diaz,
here.
back when I was a kid, he had the famous "Eat 'em up conch," "Eat 'em up conchs." That was his.
That was Eddie Diaz.
Yes, Killy,
Yes.
Killy Diaz. Terry Daughtry was another one who wouldn't miss the games. I mentioned him in my speech at dinner on the Diamond. When I hit that triple against Miami Beach High, he was standing there with both hands up in the air like that. And what I had just didn't mean anything because I was so happy for him. Yeah. So fans are, you guys are the greatest. You are the legend now, in my opinion. There's no one better than you.
I'm having a lot of fun. Like I said, I can't believe this life I'm living. That's
Oh,
my job. That's my job, just to keep cheering for the Conch. I can do that.
Sandy and I were talking about, we need to get down there for a game. I said, I know where I'm going. I'm going to the K corner.
That's it. We got you a seat whenever you
I'm
want.
ready.
Reserve seating right there.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Hey, tell me a little bit about, you mentioned Sandy. We'll go ahead and kind of work our way out here. Tell me about Atlanta. Tell me about your family. And what's going on when you're not listening and tuning into the Conchs?
Well, you know what, Joy? I'm blessed. My wife, we came up here, didn't know anyone in the world with our two kids. Didn't know anybody up in the Atlanta area except for one person, Johnny Mara, Sibba Zelch's dad. And we contacted him and he said, you guys should move to Atlanta. And I said, not unless we either own a salon or I get to manage one. He said, well, I know where there's one for sale. So we went over, we saw it. It was a tiny little hole in the wall. We made a verbal offer on a handshake. It was accepted. We went back to Boca Raton where we were living then. We put a for sale by owner sign in the yard. The house sold in 3 days. We moved up here, and today we now have over 40 employees. That salon has given us great success. But I'm blessed. I'm blessed with two great kids, a wonderful little cherished granddaughter, Blake, who just is the
She's
apple of my
adorable.
eye. Oh, she got Papa Slick wrapped around her finger. And of course, last year we endured Sandy's cancer battle, but thankfully she's doing wonderfully now. She's cancer free, and I couldn't ask for anything more. But what do I do on my spare time? I fish,
I
and
was
my
gonna ask
motto is,
you, how's the fishing up there?
well, you know what? My motto is, "Who needs a boat?" And I got that from my cousin Ruben and Eddie Roberts, fishing down there at the southernmost point with them fools. But I have a client. We have a client in the salon who has a very nice piece of property, and it's got a nice pond on it. And I go there and have the key, the code to the gate. I go in and fish, and if I catch some, fine. If I don't, I get in the car and I go home. But the picture I sent you of the fish today, that was in Florida. That's at my sister-in-law's house.
Okay.
In Melbourne. And the bass are much bigger in Florida than they are up here.
That was like one of those big mouth bass.
That's
Must have
largemouth
been,
bass.
right?
Yeah,
That's why it's called that?
largemouth bass. Yeah,
All right.
he
Large
probably
mouth.
in the area of 8 to 10 pounds. I came up here. The crazy thing, Joy, is I had never fished with a rod and reel. I had always fished with a traditional yo-yo hand line in Key West. So I'm like, okay. So I got this little Zebco thing, that the kids use, and I started with that. And then I got this reel called a bait caster, and I catch so much flack from everybody in Key West because I have a right hand return. And all the boys down there fish with a left hand return, and they fish with spinning rods. I can't fish with a spinning rod, but they can't fish with the bait caster because if you throw it, you don't throw it just right, it bird nests, and you've got a mess on your hands. So I have learned how to perfect that, and That's what I fish with.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, I love it. I'm enthralled with it because it's a mind game. I don't know. We use artificial lures. We don't use real bait. We don't use mullet or shrimp or shiners. We don't throw the raya, the cast net. We just go out and use artificial lures. We don't know if they're hitting on red or green. If they're hitting on the bottom or they're hitting in the middle. We don't know.
So can you cook bass with does bass and grits go together like grits and grunts?
You know what? It's funny you tell that story. We had a lake house up at Lake Hartwell in South Carolina years ago, and we would always go up for the weekends. And of course, the kids, you gotta love them. They come up, and as soon as it was time to go home, they haul butt back to Atlanta, and the old man's got to clean up everything. So I'm out there cleaning the jet ski, cleaning the boat, and all my stuff was already packed away, and I saw a rod and reel laying there, so I flipped out the lure and talking to Sandy on the phone. I'm like, oh my God, the line takes off. So I reel it in, and this spotted bass has got the hook stuck way down in his gills. And I'm like, oh man, I don't have my pliers. The house is about 100 yards away. I'm trying. Finally, I get him loose. When he gets in the water, he goes down to the bottom. Well, the water there was only about 4.5 feet. So I jump in, I get him. I try to revive him. I'm walking back and forth, and he's gone. So I called Sandy and I said, bring me the sharpest knife you got. And she comes down to the dock and she says, you still remember how to fillet a fish? I said, sure. So I filleted him. I took him into the house, put some olive oil in a pan, got some onions, some garlic, and Joy, it was delicious. I wouldn't eat one out of the pond because God knows what's in that pond. But out of this big lake, yeah, I would.
Hey, oh man, you know what? I say you were a great storyteller. All I had to do was make sure the mic was turned on, and that was good stuff. And then a storyteller and a fish story, you gotta love it.
Oh yeah.
So let me ask you one more question.
Yes, sir.
And we'll wrap this up.
Okay.
What brings you joy, Victor?
Brings me joy is, number one, good health, peace, and prosperity. And this right here, being able to share the stories of the past, bringing smiles to people's faces, and knowing that whatever I give is to benefit them. I heard a great quote the other day that said, when the light that shines upon you is greater than the light that shines within you, the light that shines upon you will destroy you. So you've got to make sure that this light right here is always radiating out there for good, to help people to do the right thing and not the popular thing. That's what brings me joy on a day in and day out. Health is so important, Joy. Without it, we don't have anything at all. I sometimes wish that this Victor would have been around back in those days, because I see things so differently. I'm a cancer survivor as well. As Sandy, I've had open heart surgery. But anytime I could help someone better themselves, that brings me a lot of joy. Because then I'll know that a small part of me lives within that individual.
I know there's a big part of you inside of me.
Well,
and I'm so grateful for our friendship. I really value you.
Yeah, likewise, my friend. You know what? I think the world of you. I've known you since you were that little girl with that mess of hair running around. Oh my God. And you have grown in and blossomed into what a lot of us wish we could be. You are one quality individual. I never forget when John Martina went down to Key West when you were working with the school board, and I ran into someone I said, hey, Joy Nulish. I said, what? Yeah, and I've been cutting John's hair for 30 years. And when he told me that, I said, you won't find any better than that.
It's a small world, right?
It's a small world. It is a small world.
Hey, well, I'm glad we're in each other's world. That's for sure.
Yes, I am so grateful for our friendship, for our communication, our love of the game, our love of people, and more importantly, our love of those conchs.
Go Conchs.
Forever conchs.
I'm Joy Nulish, and I appreciate you tuning into my podcast. My purpose is to bring joy into my life and the lives of others. If you enjoyed this episode, drop a review, share, and subscribe because there's a lot of good stuff on tap. You can also follow Bring Joy on YouTube and Instagram, or check my website at joynulish.com. Now go bring joy to the people in your world. Until next time, much love.